Hey there. I should specify, obviously, that I'm talking about my glucose or my continuous glucose monitor, which is the Enlight glucose monitor that goes hand in hand with the MiniMed 530G that I have for my insulin pump. It reads my sensor glucose every 5 minutes, and it sends that reading directly to the pump. The pump then has graphs that, which I'm going to show you, so I'm going to unhook for a minute. It has graphs that will tell you, you can look at it every 3 hours, every 6 hours, every 12 hours, and every 24 hours. I usually keep mine set at 12 hours because I kind of like to see where I've been and where I haven't. And if I can even get this to focus, I'm kind of nervous to show you that, yeah, I have been, or at least this, yeah, it's coming in. And you can see that graph, I don't know how to get it to focus very well, but you can see the graph in the center here, and that the top line is set at my, where I think it's like 200 or 225. Basically, that's my high range. And then the bottom line, I believe, is 120, maybe 100. I can't remember because the settings were done before, but basically, as long as I stay in between those lines, then I'm kind of quote unquote within my normal limits. As you can see, it says right now I'm 103 and I'm headed down. Whether or not that's perfectly accurate, you never really know. It could be because I'm feeling a little hungry right now, but the reason why I say you never really know is that there's another screen, which is a sensor status screen on your insulin pump, if you have this one, that will show, I don't know what's causing that glare or how to get it to go away because I'm not a master at this yet. But you see right here, it says sensor iSig, and right now it's at 15.28. I noticed that the, ideally, I think that number should be, and I don't know this for sure, I just know that when they troubleshoot it, they want that number to be somewhere around like 30-ish. I noticed that mine will go as high as in the 50s, and the higher the number is, the better signal is being transmitted from my glucose monitor to my insulin pump. So I noticed that when like that number gets 10 or lower, it tends to not be as accurate. Okay, so the differences between the sensor glucose and the blood glucose. So the glucose monitor system, the sensor, I showed you guys in that last video, and I kind of wanted another one in case you guys hadn't seen that. But there's that little electrode, that comes out. That just sits in your interstitial fluid, just underneath your skin. It sits just under in your interstitial fluid. And glucose, when it enters your body, tends to go to the bloodstream first, and then it goes into your bloodstream and then into your interstitial fluid, and it kind of moves back and forth from what I understand. It moves back and forth between your blood and your bloodstream and your interstitial fluid. So the reasons why they say that's not as accurate is let's say I've just bolused for my meal, and now I'm eating my food. Well, my blood glucose is going up higher than normal because now I'm not fasting, right? So now it's going up faster than it normally will. So my blood glucose is going up, and my sensor glucose is slowly but surely catching up because, again, glucose hits your bloodstream first before it hits your interstitial fluid. So eventually that'll catch back up, but then now I'm eating. Okay, so now I'm going to reverse that. Now I'm eating, now I've ate, and now my blood glucose is coming back down. So that interstitial fluid is still up on the high. There's still more glucose in my interstitial fluid than there is in my blood glucose. So now as my blood glucose is coming down, my interstitial is kind of following behind, but not directly with it. Okay, which is fine. The whole purpose of this system at this point, and hopefully, in the years to come and in the research to come, it will become much more accurate and basically become an artificial pancreas where I won't even have to worry about this. But until that time comes, the purpose of the continuous glucose monitor is to notice trends. And a perfect example is I went to my endocrinologist, and when I went there, he was able to pull up. There's some software that comes with this called CareLink. They were able to pull up my readings that are all in my pump, and it has, every time I've ever checked my blood sugar, it has every bolus, every manual bolus, every bolus wizard that I've used, every sensor glucose reading for every 5 minutes. But more importantly, what it has is graphs from those sensor glucose readings. And what it showed clear as day, regardless of what the number was, but what it showed perfectly clear was over a 2-week period of time, you could see that after dinner, 2 hours after dinner, and then as I was going to bed, and throughout the morning and even after breakfast, I tend to stay within a normal range, or on kind of a flat line, so to speak. Not perfectly flat, wouldn't that be great? But I tend to stay at a fairly normal rate. And then it would show that I had lunch, and then bam, it would go up and come back down. And then I would be great for a little while, and then I'd have dinner, and bam, it'd go up and then come back down. And so you could clearly tell that I was spiking after lunch and after dinner. And so what that showed my endocrinologist was that maybe I needed to tweak some of those settings. Maybe I needed to change my insulin to carb ratio for lunch and for dinner. And that basically my basal rates, my background rates that I had set were working, because I wasn't having highs and lows when I was not eating. I was staying normal when I was not eating. So that is the importance of the continuous glucose monitor. Again, I'd like for it to be more accurate. The biggest things to know, I think, that I should point out is that I have, and you have your own settings. Everybody has their own settings and what they like in their pump. And I have certain ones set to say that I like mine to tell me when I'm 225, or, when my sensor glucose reads at 225, it alarms and it tells me that I have a high blood sugar. Depending upon when that alarms, like if it alarms just after I've eaten something, or within the 2 hours after I've eaten something, I won't necessarily correct. And honestly, I won't necessarily check my blood glucose yet, because I'll wait until that 2 hour hits, 2 hours after I've eaten something, and then I'll check it to see if I need a correction, or, if there's something I should do. Having a continuous glucose monitor does not mean that you do not have to check your blood sugar. It does not mean that. I have to tell you, as a matter of fact, I probably check mine more often because I want to ensure accuracy, I guess, so to speak. One thing is that no matter what, when it tells me I'm low, no matter what, that is one time I will check. I will check my blood glucose, because you want to know. And there are times when I do have false lows, particularly sometimes in the middle of the night. If I'm laying on my stomach, it pushes the continuous glucose monitor, or the sensor, into my stomach a little bit, and for some reason the ISIG, or the signal, tends to go to that lower number, and it doesn't really always read accurately. So no matter what, I always check, of course, but there are lots of times, I shouldn't say lots, but there have been plenty of times so far that it has alarmed while I'm sleeping that I'm going low. And by golly, I have gone low, and I needed to treat myself. I think the lowest I've gone, because I have it set to tell me when I hit 69 or below. So I think the lowest that I've gotten for a reading when this is alarming is probably somewhere in the 50s. But even that doesn't happen often. Normally it'll tell me when I'm in the 60s, so, which is good. Now I have time to correct before it gets even lower. I don't have to, but honestly, for me, by then I'm already feeling shaky, and I know something's a little off. But if if you're sleeping, you don't know that. You're sleeping. So that is the main differences between your blood and glucose, or your sensor glucose and your blood glucose. I also noticed that the longer I go without eating, in between meals, the more accurate it will read. There are lots of times that I will check my blood sugar just before eating something, so I know how much insulin to give myself to cover what I'm eating, and it'll be spot on. I've had them come to the exact same number. Doesn't happen often, but the exact same number, and then usually it's within 5 to 10 points difference if I've gone a good 5 to 6 hours without eating. And if my sensor is placed in a good part of my stomach, that it's getting good readings. Now for me, I noticed that My good spots tend to be like right here, just inside the rib cage. Those are where mine tend to be right now. My glucose, it's right here, and it's kind of on a muscular part, and so it's, for some reason it's not getting as good of a reading right now. So I tend to not trust it as much right now. But then again, it's still doing its job, and I'm still doing mine. I still check my blood sugar. Honestly, I check mine about 6 to 8 times a day. No matter what, I check it before meals, obviously, because I'm not going to go in blindly and give myself insulin for what I think, what this is telling me my blood sugar is. I'm not going to give myself insulin based on that because I don't know for sure that that's what it is. So no matter what, I check it at least breakfast, lunch, dinner, and before bed. That being said, those no matter what, those 4 times a day is when I calibrate my blood sugar to this to the sensor. The books say you should calibrate it 3 to 4 times a day. I always calibrate it the 4 times a day. It seems to be better for me. However, there's times that I can't. If you remember when that arrow was pointing down, you never want to calibrate your sensor if your arrows are pointing up or down. You never want to do it when there's an arrow. You're going down and you're calculating it wrong, and it's going to make the calibration all off. So there's actually times that I'll sit up at night, and before I do my last one, before I go to bed, I'll wait until that stupid arrow's gone, and it might take a little while before I go to bed, because I want to calibrate it right before I go to bed. I tend to get better overnight readings that way, and less alarms and less awakenings, and I get cranky when I get awakened a lot, especially if it's false. So I always want to try and calibrate before I go to bed. Sometimes it's not always possible, and sometimes it is. If I'm going low before lunch and those arrows are there, I don't calibrate. I wait until 2 hours after lunch, and that's when I calibrate. But I do calibrate it the 4 times a day. So like I said, breakfast, lunch, dinner, which my breakfast happens to also be my fasting. So, breakfast, lunch, dinner, before bed. But I'm kind of neurotic, so I tend to also check after I eat something, or of course when it's alarming. Again, when it's alarming, I'm going to check. And sometimes it's a false alarm, so sometimes I'm checking more often because of the continuous glucose monitor. So I guess what I'm getting at with that is don't get on this continuous glucose monitor, whatever it may be, the Dexcom, the Enlite, whatever might be out there. Don't get on it just because you think, oh good, I'll never have to check my blood sugar again, because that's not the way it works. And I did go in falsely with the hopes of thinking, maybe I'll never have to check, or maybe I'll have to check less. And there are days that I really only check those 4 times a day. There are really days that I only check those 4 times a day. Again, some people are like, oh my God, 4 times a day, and da-da-da-da-da. When I first started, I was led to believe that maybe I would only have to calibrate it twice a day, because technically you only have to calibrate it every 12 hours, except for when the first day you insert it, you have to calibrate it 2 hours after the warm-up, one more time within 6 hours, and then one more time within 12 hours. So other than that, you don't have to calibrate it the 4 times a day. That just seems to be when I get the most accuracy out of it. So I do. So again, don't go in thinking that, I'm going to get this continuous glucose and I'll never, ever have to, check my blood sugar again. That's not the way it works. Instead, go into this CGM experience with the mind frame and the mindset of, I'm going to figure out what my body is doing, and I'm going to figure out what certain foods do to my body. I'm going to see what pizza does and when I spike. Do I spike 2 hours after my pizza, or do I spike 4 hours after my pizza? The pizza effect, For me, I'm going to see what wine does when I drink a glass of wine. I'm going to see what beer does when I drink some beer. Things like that. So for me, it has very much become my safety net. It's my safety net. It is if all else fails, this puppy's going to tell me. I have to say that. If all else fails, this puppy tells me when I'm going low. So even if for some reason I'm not feeling it, maybe I've had a beer and I'm a little from the beer, thinking, oh, that's why I feel funny. Oh no, my trusty pinky here will tell me when I'm going low. Even if it's not completely accurate, it does tell me when I'm going low. So that part I have to say, like, I wouldn't trade that off for the world. I just wouldn't. I wouldn't trade it off for the world. So, all right, my video is going kind of long, but there you have it. That is the differences between sensor glucose and blood glucose. And if I missed anything or I didn't touch on anything or whatever, just feel free to leave me comments, preferably nice ones, or questions. And if I don't know the answer, I will find out the answer one way or another. But hopefully I can answer it from personal experience, because that's kind of where I want to go with these. And if you guys have any tips for me or any information for me, please feel free to share. All right, I will talk to you guys soon, hopefully a little sooner. All right, I'll see you guys later. Bye.